In this section, we will look into cloner. Let's click on it. Cloner is actually helping us to clone our objects. Let's create a cube and we try to insert the cube under the cloner. Right now we have our cube cloned into few more cubes and we click onto the cloner. First thing we see that the cloner we have basic, coordinate, object, transform and effector. Mainly we will get into the object first. Now we have the mode and these are the modes that we can play around with. We have object, linear, radial, grid and honeycomb. Let's get into the linear. Now we are in the linear mode and if you take a look at here, we have 3 cubes duplicated and the distance between them is 50 cm. Our cube by default is 200 cm, so we need to increase the distance so that we can see that there is this cube, 3 cubes over here. Now you can increase the amount of your cube and you can offset the starting point of the cube. If you want to play around with the X, you can play around with the X and you can also play around with the Z. And if you take a look now, the mode is per step. That's why every single duplication or every single clones, it will go into this distance and slowly add it up. And you can rotate them. So the original here, it won't change, but the further you go, the further the rotation is. So let's hit it back to default. Okay, here I put 250. Under one cloner, you can have more than one object. So let's add in a pyramid. And we add in a torus. If you take a look at this, you'll be able to see that right now my cloner, I have this arranged nicely. We have torus, we have pyramid, we have the cube, torus, pyramid, cube. If let's say we don't like it to be like that, we want to make it random, you can go to the cloner and change to random. And if you feel that, I don't like this arrangement, I want to pick and choose the one that I like, you can play around with the seeds. And let's take a look what transform is. Inside transform, you can still play around with the position, rotation and scale. And if you play around the position, it will affect all the elements one by one. And if you rotate in this, it will rotate every single elements in the cloner. So this is what transform can do. Basically, it can control each element separately in their position, rotation and scale. Other than linear mode, what do we have? I can go down and see that the radial mode. Once I have the radial mode on, this is the count that I have. I have 5 elements over here and I need to increase the radius so that I can see it properly. I increase the count as well. So right now I'm in a plane that is X and Z, and if I want to stand up, we can see the X and Y or Z and Y. So this is how you want the plane to be, and you can also play around with the starting angle and the ending angle. And we can see the offset of it. So this is what you can play with radial cloner mode. And we can get into grid mode, and this is what we have right now. I need to increase the size of the distance. Now if you take a look, our Y is actually 1 count, meaning that we have 1 layer. I can increase it to 3 layer as well, and I need to increase the size so that I have something like this. Now I have my honeycomb as well, and this is the honeycomb. You can play around with the count of the width, the count of the height. You can increase the size as well. And you can play around circle. Play around with the spline. If you have a spline, you can create a spline and put the spline in. Now let's take a look object cloner. So let's click onto the object cloner. Right now you cannot see anything because there is no object that it can read from. So you see the object panel here is empty. So what we need to create is we need to create an object so that it can follow. So right now I choose a platonic and I click onto the cloner and I drag and drop my platonic into the object tab. And right now I see all my cloners squeezing together. This is because my platonic is too small. Right now I need to increase my platonic. So now you'll be able to see the platonic and you'll be able to see the cloner objects scattered around. Now I click back into my cloner, and if you take a look at here, my distribution is actually on surface, meaning that it will randomly scattered around the surface. We can choose to distribute onto vertex, and right now you see all the cloner are arranged on the vertex itself, and edge, polygon center, each polygon center, and volume. Volume is the volume of the platonic. I can turn this off to see that everything is in the center, or we go for axis. Axis, everything will be in the center of the platonic. Now, if let's say you want to make the platonic disappear because when you want to render, you want the render only have this cloner object, you can't really cross this platonic, because once you cross, meaning the platonic is not functioning at all. So what you can do is you just switch these little dots off, turn it into red. The upper one is for the viewing on the view section, preview panel, and the bottom dots is for the rendering. So once you turn off both, you won't be able to view it, and when you render, you won't be able to render it out as well. So this is what you can play with cloner.